Hey guys, this is Mike 1013 for FlopTurnRiver. This week I decided to do something a little bit different from my usual videos. I'm going to record a short live session. So I'm here at two 4NL tables on Carbon Poker. And they're both full ring tables. I'm aware that it's likely or possible that nothing interesting will happen in 10 or 15 minutes of full ring NL poker, but I think what we're going to do is try to focus on observing opponents' tendencies and trying to take notes on what they're doing or what they might be doing. So I'm going to try to pay attention to hands where I've already folded, which is a very big problem for me and probably for many of you. But we really should be paying attention to hands even when we're not involved. Let me explain the HUD stats that I have up here. The first number is VPIP, second number PFR, third is 3-bet percent, and steal percent. Then on the next line we have C-bet, fold to C-bet, aggression percent, 1 to showdown, and 1 money at showdown. But mainly the most important stats that we're going to be using are PFR, VPIP, 3-bet, C-bet, fold to C-bet. The other stats require a larger sample size of information before we can begin to have even the slightest idea of what they mean or if they're accurate. Okay, so we saw Ray Allen here open the button and he opened to 3x. I'm inclined to believe that he's possibly not adjusting his open raise sizes based on position, because 3x in the button is kind of high. And what happened here? This guy flatted and back raised, I think, with ace king. This J Neal 25 guy. I'm gonna look at that hand history just to be sure. Let's see, pre-flop. What happened? Okay, someone raised. Yeah, he flatted, and then when someone 3-bet behind him, he back raised. We can make a note on that. Okay. So, this one guy here, Raya74, I actually had started a table with him because the traffic was kind of light here on a Sunday afternoon. So I waitlisted this table, and I got a seat, and I started a table against Raya, and I was fortunate enough to win a buy-in from him. On the turn, I made top 2 pair with ace-queen, and I check-raised all in, and he called it off with just top pair and an 8 kicker. So we might say he has fishy tendencies, or we might just say he's bad at heads up. It's hard to say. I did notice he folded to a lot of my 3-bets, so I wrote that in the notes. But it's good we have position on him, and we almost have position on him on the other table too, which might prove profitable if we get the right hands. Okay, so this guy opened to not 9x, like 4.5x. Okay, and we don't see what he had. But we could try to keep an eye on him and see if he's changing his bet sizes. Maybe 4.5x means, you know, big hand, monster hand. So we're not going to play this queen 4 off. It's bad. Despite a couple of really bad limpers. You know, you take advantage of really bad limpers by outplaying them post-flop or having, you know, stronger hand selection than they do. And it's hard to outplay people in a multi-way pot, and queen 4 off can't be stronger than his range. So there's just no reason to get involved in that spot. Similarly, there's no reason to cold call here with Jack 10 off. It's an interesting hand to 3-bet, to squeeze. But I don't know, do we... See, his fold to 3-bet, we don't really have stats on him, but it looks low. We very well might move this guy off, whatever he has, if we 3-bet, but that doesn't help us. We still have to get through the fish. If I had jacks in that spot, I'd 3-bet. I think just looking at this guy's stats, 2013, he's doing a fair bit of cold calling or maybe limping, and he's probably calling 3-bets pretty wide as well. Okay, so now we have ace-king, and I think this is a 3-bet call it off because of stack sizes. If the stacks were deeper, we could consider just flatting. But I think we should be pretty happy here just to get it in. And we want to make the guy think he has fold equity, so he has, what, 120? We can make it like 32. And let him maybe, you know, shove over with ace-queen or something. So ordinarily I make a larger sized raise, something maybe around 36 to 40 cents against 2 players, but simply due to stack size and that we want him to be able to shove over light. I think making a little bit smaller 3-bet there is the play, for sure. Okay, I don't want to 3-bet twice in a row. You know, not with the second one being a bluff. And ace-9, I don't know if it's a profitable cold call. This guy Riot seems like he's playing somewhat reasonably now, or somewhat tight. We do have a small sample, but I haven't seen him get out of line very much at all since the table filled up. So I'll give him credit there for having a hand better than ace-9. And so that's a decent hand to 3-bet with, if you don't think you can cold call with it. So I'd consider 3-betting it, especially since I have a note on this guy. He folds to a lot of 3-bets. But I just don't want to 3-bet twice in a row and have the second one be a bluff. When you 3-bet consecutive hands, I think people tend to play back a bit more. They'll remember that you hit 3-bet just the hand before. Okay, and I'll open for pot here. That's what I've been doing on these 4NL tables, is opening for pot, which is 3.5x. And in the cutoff, I'm opening for 3/4 pot, and in the button, I'm opening for 2/3 pot, which is 2.5x. I think those are decent sizes against just the general player pool at this level. You'll notice these seem like they might be somewhat tight tables for 4NL. And at times on the merge network here, the tables do become filled with regs sometimes. It's a US facing site, and there aren't as many fish as there might be on other sites. Still, there are, during prime time in the evening, there are a decent amount of good tables, and even here we do have a few fish. We have this 58-26 guy, and on this table we have the 31-9 guy, whom unfortunately we don't have position on. And most of the regs are not very good. At this level, you see a 10-8 and a 13-9, although we don't have, huge samples on them. This type of player is pretty common here. Kind of taggy, but a little bit too tight. Not really 3-betting enough. So, I'm not worried about those guys necessarily. They're not going to be doing a lot of exploiting of me. And I could probably exploit them, especially if they're in the blinds and it's my button. You can steal a lot of blinds from guys like that. So I said I'd be trying to pay attention to other hands that we're not involved in, but that kind of has fallen by the wayside. Oh, look at that. I would have had 4 of a kind. Yeah, I'm results oriented. Okay, pocket 8s. Oh, and my fish just left. The guy who I want to stack from. So this is interesting now. I have a note on him. What does it... Oh, he's the guy who flatted. He's king. Okay, this is interesting. I think I'm for sure ahead of this guy's range. I don't think I can 3-bet this profitably. I'd rather just set mine, 3 ways. And that's not a bad flop. It's not a great flop either. If he c-bets, yeah, if he pots it 3 ways, I'm just giving him credit. I'm just gonna fold. So let's talk about not 3-betting there. So 8s is ahead of his range, probably. He seems like a fish with a wide opening range. But we have to consider this is only over 22 hands, so we can't put, a tremendous amount of faith in those numbers. Moreover, if we do 3-bet, the range that he's continuing to the 3-bet with is not going to be whatever his opening range is. It's going to be somewhat narrower. And it might be such that 8s is not a favorite against that range. And what if he 4-bets? Then what? And then we have to consider if we call, this guy probably is calling as well. So we might be able to set mine in a 3-way pot, which is pretty good. You want to play 3-way or multi-way pots when you have a small pocket pair. So I think flatting there was the best play. And your positional disadvantage from being in the small blind doesn't hurt you as much when you have a small pocket pair, because if you flop a set, you're going to be good a ton. And getting the money in isn't really, you're not going to really be hindered by being out of position that much. Whereas if you have a suited connector type of hand, you want to benefit from like semi-bluffing and making moves, which is much easier in position. So here a couple of people flatted, and there was someone who posted, and I elected to fold ace-5 off. We don't really know much about these guys, how they play. Ace-5 off might be a favorite, slight favorite against their ranges. But I don't think it's a hand you have to play in that spot. If there was only one limper, or just the one limper in the poster, I would have raised it up. Because the fold equity, our fold equity would be improved clearly if there are fewer players. So this Jag-1 elephant, or whatever, Yag, I don't know what it is. Where is he from? He's from the United States. Jag-1 elephant. It seems like he's shaping up to be a decent short stacker. You know, those stats are somewhat aggressive. 2016. I'm not sure. Can you buy? I don't even know. Because he only has 30 big blinds. I'm not sure if that's the tape. You know, I thought you had to buy in for 40. So maybe he bought in for 40 and lost, you know, lost a few. Okay, so King 10 suited. I think we can call here. Especially given that this guy doesn't look too good. Although it's a very small sample. And he only opened for 2.5 big blinds. Okay, so this is pretty nice. We have an overcard here and the flush draw. I think we can bet here, and a lot of people are going to fold. Okay, that was nice. So normally I don't bluff or semi-bluff into a four-way pot, but the board was so dry. I mean, you know, do guys have queens in their cold calling range? A few, very few. Of course, you know, what I hear from people is, well, these guys are fish, you know, they could have anything. And that holds true for this JJ Go person and this sick one. But if they have, you know, if their range is so wide and they have everything, they don't just have, you know, queens, random queens in their range. They have random jacks, random, you know, sevens, random kings. They, you know, if their range is wide, that doesn't mean they have a monster. It means they have nothing most of the time. So given that there was no action to me, I thought it was pretty good. A pretty good board where everyone's going to miss a lot of the time. And so that's why I made the semi-bluff there in a four-way pot, which usually I don't do. And having the overcard does help in case someone wants to play with pocket tens or something, or pocket nines. What was the board? Yeah, queen, queen, 4. Yeah, so, you know, middle pairs could want to play. And in that case, having an overcard or two obviously helps. If I had been raised, I guess it depends on sizing, but I could see folding or I could see calling. Depending who made the raise. Okay, so that I suspect was an interesting hand there between Sick One and Aquaholic. Let's see what happened there. So it folded around. So Aquaholic raised. Sick One defended his big blind with King 8 offsuit. That's not a spectacular play. And okay, so we'll pot here. I have no problem opening these small pockets under the gun when the table looks bad. And especially when the table is not 3-bet happy. You know, I don't mind if people cold call. That's what I want with pocket fives. They can cold call all day. What happened? Aquaholic raised, Sick One defended. Check bet. Okay, so he called with third pair there. And no redraw, really. He called all the way down. No, river checked. Okay, so... Alright, and I'm folding against this guy for sure. So the Sick One, and his stats confirm it, but, you know, we see that he can call down pretty light. I don't think I can call. You know, with just an 8 there on the turn. Maybe on the flop. but even on the flop, it's not really good. I mean, that's a board that, in position, it's different. You could argue that you're floating, but out of position, it's just hard to see what calling down with third pair does. And if you are floating, you have to do something, like on the turn, right? You can't just call down. Check, call, check, call. You don't win pots like that. But, you know, I'm giving him too much credit talking about floating and making moves. He's just a fish. He caught a piece of the board and, you know, he wants to show it down. So we can remember that in future for pots against him. And he only has 40 big blinds. But unlike this guy who might be a competent short stacker, this sick one guy is just a fish. Okay, so we're 20 minutes into the video now, which is amazing because it feels like nothing's happened and I haven't talked about anything. So I think I'm going to unpost, and this will be the last orbit. Alright, so we'll open here. Now 10-9 offsuit, that's a pretty good hand, right, for stealing? But I don't think so. Not in this spot. Even though the blinds are nets, we do have to get through this fish, and he probably likes to call. The cutoff is not the button. If this was the button, I'd certainly open 10-9 off there. But the cutoff is just worse. It's a worse position, first of all, in case you do have to play post-flop. And there's 3 opponents to get through instead of 2. And so the general principle of bluffing, that it's easier against fewer opponents, that holds true even pre-flop. You know, 3 opponents having to fold is harder to accomplish than 2 opponents having to fold. So that's interesting that he's short stacking this J1 Effant. And he's still opening to 3x. It could be good because there are a bunch of fish that can give him action. And so their cold calls are even worse given his stack size. Given, that there's only 40, 35 big blinds behind. Because now they can't hit miracles enough with their garbage. When they do hit their miracle card, there's not any money really for them to win. Or I shouldn't say there's not any. That there's much less money for them to win. Okay, that was interesting. So this guy, he can bluff. He can bluff turns. Did he bluff the flop? Okay, so he floated the flop with 2 overs and a gutter, and then he bluffed the turn. Okay, so that's a pretty sophisticated strategy. Okay, we're sitting out of that table. For someone of that guy's stats, that's a pretty sophisticated or lucky play. So we'll take a note on it. Did he bet the turn? It was checked to him, right? Yeah. He had position, okay. So I'll put float flop in position with overs and gutter bet turn. So this is pretty useful. Sometimes we can induce action on purpose by checking the turn. But that's irrelevant for now because we're closing the table. And it looks like that was the last hand at the other table as well. So thank you for watching, guys. We didn't really get into, big interesting spots or decisions. But we did have a few good opportunities to make observations on our opponents and to perhaps, take some decent notes on their tendencies. Later, guys.